we've been accused of not being interested in the truth.
And just to remind people what this is referring to, this is after Charlie's murder, there were text messages that from a private group chat that were made public and were used to, frankly, kick off the big conspiracy theory that we've run into over and over again, which is that Israel or the Jews had Charlie murdered.
Yes. So,
which we do not believe.
But we have been accused of trying to, or we're not interested in the truth. The actual fact of the matter is that behind the scenes, we have given everything we know to give, every single piece of information. This was one of them. I was told I could trust Joe Kent. I provided the screen grabs to Joe Kent. I don't know what happened to them at that point. Okay, I just want to make that very clear. Joe did message me and suggest that I make those screen grabs public. I declined because those were shared privately. I didn't want to be reckless with them in the public. There could be innocent people on that group chat that would then be harmed. I want to take the start of this show to address some of the things that have been going around on public, namely about a group text chain that has been made known and released by Candace Owens. And I just want to address it head on because, that was a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there.
Yeah, there could be innocent people that could be harmed. Like, I don't know, Charlie Kirk, maybe? So that's Andrew Colvett basically letting the cat out of the bag that he turned over that group chat that Candace Owens made public that demonstrated that Charlie Kirk had been under massive pressure from pro-Zionist donors and that he was leaving the pro-Israel cause. And now we know the truth, that that's all real. So I'll start there. Julian Dorey, host of the Julian Dorey podcast, big fan of his. Just curious what your thoughts are. Have you been following the Candace Owens case, the Charlie Kirk case, spearheaded by Candace Owens, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of impossible to go on Twitter or X and not see that, at least in the background. I think pretty much everyone else I've ever talked to on this, smell a rat. The idea that this kid, this crazy 20-year-old kid just acted alone, similarly to like what we saw in Butler, where they're like, crooks acted alone, don't worry about it, nothing to see here, makes no sense. It's not to say he didn't fire the shot. I could see that certainly being the case, but at the same time, there was a lot going on here, and there was an unbelievable effort to sweep this under the rug. And, this is the other thing, and I've only recently started going here with this, and maybe I could have done this earlier, but I did want to play out. I remember, so he was killed on a Wednesday. On Friday, I had to drive like 6 hours to my buddy's wedding first thing in the morning. So Friday night, I'm chilling, getting a little work done, and I see an announcement come through that Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, is going to speak publicly. So I'm like, all right, let's turn this thing on right here. And I turned it on, and maybe she talked for like 10, 15 minutes. And I shut the computer, and I actually felt guilty because that thing where you're just like, this is so fucking off. Like, was I just watching an actress? That was not real. That is what I felt. And I felt guilty about this because I was like, how dare you have that thought, Julian? How dare you go after a grieving widow like that in your gut? It was just a thought. It was like my own personal thought crime, if you will. How Orwellian. But a couple days later.
The Uncanny Valley?
Yes.
I want justice for my husband.
When one of President Trump's closest advisors, who is vocally advocating for us to not go to war with Iran and for us to rethink at least our relationship with the Israelis, and then he's suddenly publicly assassinated.
Go down that rabbit hole, whatever.
We were stopped from continuing to investigate. Charlie was under a lot of pressure from a lot of pro-Israel donors.
He took massive abuse from his own donors. And they expressed it to him in a very intense way. I know because he showed me.
I have text messages, Megyn, calling me an anti-Semite.
Be very careful, Charlie. The prophets warned that those who curse Israel will be cursed. He is going to lift his hand from you. It will be to your peril. He did feel threatened by that.
He didn't say that. Everyone wants an answer to this evil. And sometimes the answer is very clear.
We still had a lot more leads to run down that pertained to some kind of a foreign nexus.
How do you know?
We're cut off pretty early on from being able to access like the files.
I've seen it all.
Told that, hey, you guys need to stop. You can't work on this anymore. Not an honest effort was given.
You don't believe the truth. I don't know what to tell you.
If it is a slam dunk case that he took the shot, what about all the people who had prior knowledge?
The darker it gets.
I'm over there thinking I'm in crazy towns.
This is a mind virus.
There was more work for us to do on the potential of a foreign nexus.
Israel killed Charlie.
Come on.
We're coming up on several months now. Why hasn't this been done?
We are busy building.
There's been a lot of sympathy, and his movement has grown, etc.
I'm not going to sit in the corner and cry and be in fetal position.
But actual curiosity about getting to justice.
Basically daily being like, anything new, anything new.
To figuring out what happened.
Because it's too simple.
That makes me furious that we're being blocked from that.
Everyone always has to think there's more to the story. Well, sometimes there's not.
We're not allowed to ask the question anymore. What does that mean? What does that mean that there are people and there's entities out there that don't want us looking into this?
I do not have time to address the noise.
And there was more stones for us to overturn.
No rock will be unturned. Turning over every single stone.
Considering how pivotal Charlie was to the MAGA movement.
Stop.
And to President Trump, that there hasn't been a more concerted effort to find the truth and to find justice.
Stop.
She gives Uncanny Valley vibes where, like, even when you know that you're supposed to feel bad for her and you're supposed to trust her and you're supposed to like do everything you can to protect her. But because of the Uncanny Valley vibes that she gives when she speaks, that it just makes it impossible for anybody who's paying attention to still feel that way after a certain amount of time.
I haven't heard that one yet, but that's perfect because that's what it was. I remember I go to that wedding the next day, Sunday morning. I'm driving home, and my buddy Danny Jones, who hosts a great show, Danny Jones podcast, calls me. I talk to him all the time, and it was like we were both coming out of the closet, like slowly. Where I was like, "You watched that Erica Kirk thing the other night?" He's like, "Yeah, bro," and I'm like, "I don't know."
You're like waiting to see.
And he goes,
"Me
too." yeah. It was literally like that. He's like, "Oh my God, I was thinking the same thing." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm not alone here." And she just, apparently there's and I know a little less about this part now. I don't watch the case close enough to be able to give a full educated comment on this, but apparently there's all kinds of odd past links with her and places she's been. And it feels like a little bit of a setup kind of marriage, if you will. But like, she is just really cold and comes across as a terrible actress. Now, you look at someone like Amanda Knox, who was tried in the court of public opinion because she has a weird disposition, but then was clearly innocent of what she did. You do have to say that. The difference here is you have Pyrotechnics WWE lady using, fucking tissues with Vicks cream or whatever on it to make herself cry just to go out there and talk about the loss of her husband. And she says everything like almost like in the shitty iambic pentameter. And you're like, come on,
Throws his phone, daddy's home, Shabbat Shalom. Yeah.
It's so off, man.
Well, but see, here's the thing is like, and I kind of break this down as there's like the female analysis, which Candace Owens spearheads, which is like, they're all judging her based off of like how they would act because they're women and mothers and wives. And they're like, this is all wrong. And then I feel like the more male angle on this, which has been spearheaded by Baron Coleman, I've played a part in it, other people have, is like just evidence-based. Like, all right, what's weird about this narrative? And what I find the overlap in that is her behavior, which Candace Owens has highlighted, makes no sense. And then you add in this Joe Kent disclosure, which this was a big story that came out in October of 25, that he had been trying to run down a foreign node of influence or an angle in the Charlie Kirk assassination that he believed warranted investigation. And he was frozen out by Kash Patel and the FBI. This was reported on by the Daily Mail in October. So this is not like a nothing burger. And then Joe Kent, after his resignation, which, by the way, blowing the whistle about us being led into a war by Israel against Iran And this is now backburnered to this story. Kind of feels like a mistake, but anyways, we'll keep it moving. Joe Kent confirmed that it was in fact true, that he did see reason to believe that there was foreign involvement and that he wanted to make sure that there was nothing there, and he was not permitted to do so. So my question to you is, in what world does the widow / spouse of an assassination victim not back up the director of counterterrorism as he tries to run down every possible lead to make sure everybody involved in the assassination of your husband, the father of your children, and you don't back him up? TPUSA doesn't back him up. You've got members of TPUSA, including Josh Hammer, who's not really a member of TPUSA, but other people in TPUSA who seem to be wanting Joe Kent put in fucking prison. And I'm like, Joe Kent seems to be the only one who's acting honorable in this, and you guys are angry at him. And what conclusion can we come to other than, well, there's something really awry here. Like, you guys are scared to death of the truth coming out. And I've never believed that TPUSA was involved in the assassination, but there is something that they're trying to hide. And we have to wonder if that's what it is. And it makes me feel terrible to say that, but it's just the truth. Yeah.
I think there's only 3 worlds where that's the case. One world is in which she's not unhappy that it happened. Another world is in which she's in on it. And another world is in which she's pressured to not say anything by people we can't see. And all of which have massive implications. But
which is almost my exact hypothesis about Trump, by the way.
How so?
That whether or not he's in on it, whether or not he's been an op from the jump, whether or not he's being blackmailed or threatened, it's basically the exact same analysis that I have for Trump when it comes to his subservience to Israel. I don't know why he's doing it, but I feel the same way.
It's very, very strange. I know we're going to talk about that today because I think certainly the Epstein stuff is all extremely relevant. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. But it's a real red line for me when our men and women and service members are going to do something that's clearly completely unnecessary, in my opinion, and their lives are being played with because there's weird shit going on. That's not acceptable in any way. It's just not. Like I'll admit, like, I've been really angry about it since it broke out, and I haven't been completely reasonable sometimes, but like that kind of is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna drop your riff about this topic that I saw go viral a couple days ago. Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. I don't know how old you are. I think you're quite a bit younger than me, but I'm sure you were alive during the 9/11 Iraq War, right?
9/11 is one of my first vivid, I can remember every fucking thing that happened that day and how I felt memories. Yeah, I was in 3rd grade. I believe I was 8 years old. And I just remember everything about that day. I remember coming home and seeing everything on the TV and you can't fully grasp it as an 8-year-old. Let's be honest here, but no, of course. It was so visceral. And we knew people who died in those towers. I'm from this part of the world. I mean, I'm sitting a mile from where the tower was right now. I was from South Jersey, to be clear. But, we had a couple guys in town who died in that tower. But so it was real and it was home. But even 8-year-old me knew that the world had just changed. Whatever my understanding of the world was, and it was probably at a 0 then, right. At least or the 0.1% that I knew was gone.
Well, see, your generation gives me hope because for me, that memory that you're describing for me was the first Iraq War, which was basically just a CNN-led TV war where we just went in there, we crushed, we got out, and then all of a sudden we had gotten over Vietnam syndrome and we were now the empire of the world and we could take over anybody. But I was too young to really recognize that then because I was your age in 2001 back then. By 2001, I was barely an adult. I think I was 18, and it was just. I mean, I knew it was going to change the world, but I really had no capacity to grasp how dramatic that change would be and how permanent that change would be. And I think that's the thing that's most jarring about it. It's like with the COVID era. Yeah, I know there's still some people walking around with masks and shit, but for the most part, it seems as if we've moved on, and there's still like the devastation, the destitution that has hit small businesses as a consequence of the lockdowns. Like, we'll never get over all that for sure.
No.
And we certainly have a certain percentage of the population which is hypochondriacs now because of it. But like 9/11 was just such a major inflection point. I mean, from TSA to the entire spying apparatus that they rolled out against us, to the complete demolition of our privacy rights, and not even really like pretending to respect our rights anymore. And what's the reason I said that your generation gives me hope is that because you were only 8 at that point, the fact that you still recognize what a shift that was, and the fact that you said that you're angry about the Iran war, like that's what we need more of. I think that we are rife with apathy. Like, people don't care enough. People aren't angry enough. I guess it's easy for me to say since I'm kind of known for being angry as hell all the time, but like, I just don't know why people aren't more angry, man. Like, this is such a big deal. And people, I feel like people have been dispirited or something.
Well, I think part of it is a guy like you gets it because you actually look at this stuff, you educate yourself on things. It's a part of what you do for a living. And I'd like to think me too, you know, as far as like looking into the right things and learning things as they really are. And then the other part that I'll speak, at least for myself on, is I have had the privilege of becoming friends with and having on my show a lot of the baddest ass tier 1 operators from that entire G-WOT era.
Yep.
And I love those guys. And I've always said this, even before I brought those guys on the show, I never blamed the people who were sent there by the suits in DC. That is not their fault. It is not their fault, especially back then when you didn't have as much access. You didn't have social media. You didn't have as much access to information. They didn't know things like they know today, like our service members may know with what they're doing right now. And, you know, to hear all these guys look back on the G-WOT era and almost consistently to a man, even if there were some things where it's like, yes, we took out bad guys here, there, and like, yes, that was objectively good, which, you know, certainly you can find that too. Almost to a man, it's like a scale where over time they just kind of, throughout that era, slipped down farther and farther and realized sometimes it took them getting out of the military to realize, like, wait a minute, what the fuck? What were we doing? Like, that shit was kind of crazy, right? You know, it was fine to go do something after 9/11. Okay, cool. You know, you see Bin Laden. Obviously, there was a lot more of this attack for sure, but you see Bin Laden at least be behind it, and he's hiding in Afghanistan. So you want to go punish the people who are protecting him. Okay, cool. That has nothing to do with Iraq. That has nothing to do with all the things that came after it, you know,
or Libya or Syria
or exactly all these regime changes and kind of neocon strategies that don't work again and again and again and again, yet we keep doing it. And to see people try to get behind this latest strike, and to see with a guy like Trump looking at it objectively, at least from a foreign policy standpoint, the coalition of people that most got behind him to propel him into office includes people from the civilian world and the military world, and then also like the strategy world, which is a part of the civilian world, who advocated against us making all these same mistakes. Yet,
of course,
guys with 3 fucking listeners like Mark Levin are the ones that people, and obviously I've been picking on Mark a lot just because he's so much fun. But, you know, like, they're the guys you listen to? Like, this is retardville.
He actually said that too. He's like, in the conversation with Joe Kent, which I'll run a clip of, Mark Levin actually said, or like Joe Kent was basically critiquing the fact that Donald Trump was being influenced not just by Israeli advisors in the White House, but also the kind of pro-Zionist media sphere. And
pay attention, Joe. Pay attention.
How much have you thought about what's in your tap water? I used to not think about it at all, like at all. But after reading some pretty shocking studies, I've done a 180 on that. And instead of continuing to make that mistake, I've decided to purify all of my water for cooking, drinking, everything using Cove Pure. So what are these studies? Well, there's a research paper showing that atrazine, Yes, the thing that Alex Jones used to talk about. A common pesticide that can disrupt hormones in frogs, or more specifically, complete feminization and chemical castration. Yeah, pretty serious. And yes, that very pesticide has been known to run into our drinking water, which is why I'm not exactly interested in consuming it myself. That's why my family relies on Cove Pure to remove these nasty contaminants from our drinking water. Cove Pure filters out water in 4 stages and is certified to remove up to 99.9% of impurities, and it looks amazing. Now, there are many cheaper water filters on the market, but these don't filter out the tiniest particles like Cove Pure does. Pure drinking water is one of the best investments you can make, and I'm happy to share that Cove Pure is giving my audience a special discount of $200 off if you use my link, covepure.com/liberty. That's covepure.com/liberty. Get it today. Yeah, you know it. You know what happened. And Mark Levin was one of those voices. And Joe Kent was like, yeah, like you have an impact on him. And that's I think that's the thing that, you know, real ride or die Trump supporters have a hard time grappling with, or maybe they don't because they're just like Trump. But if you're influenced at all by someone like Mark Levin, you're totally unfit for office. Like that's just a fact. That's just a fact. And he said that, you know, Trump listens to him every Saturday and Sunday. I'm like, you couldn't pay me enough money. It's crazy.
Look, I'm all for hearing a spectrum of ideas. I've had people on my show that I'm sure you loathe, and I've had people on my show that I'm sure you love. That means I'm doing my job, and I care a lot about that. I'm a human. Sometimes there will be a bias on something. I've admitted with this Iran war, I have a bias, and I make no apologies about that. But for the most part, 99% of the time, I am extremely open to all ideas and letting the court of public opinion win. That said, the court of public opinion is very, very clear on like the stances of someone like Mark Levin. Is the definition of a has-been. The percentage of people that agree with him from either side of the spectrum, regardless of whether they're liberal or conservative, is extremely low. And Trump coming out and trying to say like, oh, I got 100% support in the like, the fuck are you talking? Walk out on the street, bro.
I know.
You know, I've talked to a few people that are like, well, you know, he's in Iran or through it. But like, even when I was at my parents' place a couple weeks ago, and I was literally talking with boomers, and 8 out of 10 boomers I talked with were like, yo, what the fuck are we doing here?
All right, good.
You know what I mean? Including like multiple Jewish people as well, who were like, what the fuck are we doing? And that's another problem now, because the people like the Mark Levins then suddenly declare it, whether they know they're doing it or not. They're like, oh, we speak for all Jewish people and stuff in America. The fuck you do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just like Netanyahu does. And this is crazy. Like, we got to divorce those two things. I've been very, very adamant about that, because I see where that'll go if we don't. And
so dangerous.
Yeah. And the actions, there is no government in the world, not the least of which my own, that should ever be above criticism. Like, get the fuck out of here. Are you kidding me? I'll criticize whoever I want. And like, you know, I live in a country where George Bush and Dick Cheney once ran this place. You think I like that shit looking back? No. Like when I look at countries around the world who call them war criminals, I say, I accept your terms.
Right.
Like why is this so hard?
But I mean, it's like if you opposed an action of Obama and they're like, why are you so racist? I mean, I guess they kind of did do that, but this is so extreme where it's like, this is mass death and destruction. And their argument is, if you oppose it, then you hate our ethnicity / religion. And that's always a moving target too. I think Tucker Carlson done a really good job of highlighting that. And I really appreciated it. And it's, of course, he's being absolutely dragged through the mud mercilessly for it. But it's really important that the highest profile voices are leading the charge on some of these issues, because I really believe that like the future of humanity hangs in the balance as a consequence of that paradigm. That if you're to be shamed into supporting a fledgling, really demonic empire, which is what Israel has become to its neighbors, well, then how are we to oppose it? Like, I don't know how we're going to do that. We have to take a stand at some point. And then you add into the mix the subservience that our own government has with Israeli influence on a multitude of layers. It's just such a such a deep problem. And honestly, it's one that I'm very late to the game on. I mean, I ignored this all the way up until probably 2020, and I feel like a lot of people are probably in my camp on that, but it really sucks that, like, even though I'm late to it, I still get, called all of these terrible things. And I always couch it in the same way Tucker Carlson does. Like, this is love, man. This is about peace. This is about harmony. Like, this is not about hating anybody over immutable characteristics or religion or anything like that. But you still can't do anything about it. And the Mark Levins of the world are the ones that have created that paradigm for decades. And I guess to spin it optimistically, it does appear as if that's falling, that like we can now speak freely about this. Do you feel as if it's shifted?
I definitely think there's a shift because I have a lot of thoughts here. I mean, it's a complicated.
Yeah, sorry, I went off for a long time.
No, it's good. Like it's just a complicated. It's one of those things where I can see 30,000 feet in the air some of the patterns that are happening here, but then like it makes sense in my head, but then putting it properly into words I have a little trouble with. But I do completely agree on your last point there that the paradigm is shifting on that, with people being afraid to say certain things or whatever. I think that's nuts. And I think with that also comes an opportunity to say things like they are. Obviously, we talked earlier in this conversation about the failures in the past with regime change and stuff. So that's something that I'm very hesitant on, and certainly don't support the idea of just going to do that because it doesn't work. And so, I think I've been on the record with that since at least like episode 129 with Jim Lawler, where I was like, I don't know if I said it in that episode or not, but like that goes way back to like 2022, where I'm like, I would love to see the people of Iran overthrow their government. It's a horrible government. They kill their people. They are a terrorist regime. They're all these things. That's all true. But the world is not this simple that like you can just go in and do it, because that has third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 10th order effects. And you end up being the evil empire, because the power vacuum that happens afterwards makes things worse in most cases, and the people feel like their sovereignty and their ability to self-determination, in this case it would be Iran if we went in and changed the regime, would be totally violated a couple years later, and they would be even more anti-America than they were in the first place. And I would understand why. Like, I don't know why this is a hard concept. And so I wondered, why I hadn't called for the same thing in Israel. I was wondering that a few weeks ago. So I did. I said, just like I've called on the Iranian people to overthrow their own regime, I'm not going to overthrow your fucking regime in Israel. I'm not going to overthrow your regime in Iran. Well, I mean, I'm not going to do shit. But like, if it were up to me, I wouldn't here in America. But I think you guys should do that 100%. Because also people forget, in the months leading up to October 7th, and this is a credit to a lot of people living in Israel right now. This is not talked about. Many people in that country were in the streets, and they were dangerously close to having a constitutional crisis where the government would be overthrown, because the Netanyahu government, in a country that has multiple different parties, not two parties, they win with a minority percent of hardcore right-wing Zionists. There are a lot of people that don't like him. There are a lot of people that don't support that. And then when he tried to take control of the courts, literally in the summer of 2023, they were like, yo, fuck this guy. So I'm like, yo, now your government is responsible for killing a fuck ton of people. They're basically doing a modern day Lebensraum right now in Lebanon. They're taking land for living space. I mean, literally, like Adolf Hitler wrote about that. They're doing it. Like Smotrich is advocating for the borders to change and to take parts of Lebanon, because he's always advocated for a greater Israel kind of project. Like, that's fucking crazy. So let's make some noise, people. Like, let's get in the streets and be like, yo, if we're not behind this, we're not behind this.
Right.
And so the same things I say to Iran, whose government I have zero love for. If they were dead yesterday, that wouldn't be soon enough. I will say to the Israeli government as well. I don't make a distinction here. Yeah. It's like, you're watching these rockets go back and forth, and I don't like any of the civilian stuff. But when it comes to the government officials, it's like me watching a Cowboys-Giants game. I'm rooting for the fucking asteroid. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, it's like, well, they suck and they suck. That's right. Where I'm at. I'm very, very cynical on it.
It's like the Boston Celtics versus Sacramento Kings for me as a Lakers fan.
For you. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Look, and I agree with you. I mean, I think your analysis as to why you relate on that is this kind of like just deep seated indoctrination that we all went through. That because of the Holocaust, we are all not like consciously driven to do this, but subconsciously, you're going to give additional grace that you would never give to some Islamic nation that had done what Israel has done over the past 3 years. Like no one would be giving grace if this was Yemen. That now, granted, they don't have any capacity to do what Israel's doing, but if Yemen was doing it to the Saudis or whatever, everyone would be in an uproar. But because it's a Jewish state, as they call it, everyone's very, very hesitant to say anything about it. And, you know, oftentimes this is another thing that people do. They try and couch their criticism as deep concern for the Jewish people. And so I want to just preface this by saying the reason I oppose this war is not because of deep concern for the Jewish people. It's because of deep concern for humanity, period, and peace. But I will also say, now that I've made that disclaimer, I am very, very concerned for the people of Israel, and I'm also very concerned for the people of Iran, in that I think that there's a real chance that this boils over into something that literally cannot be stopped, like totally out of control.
I agree.
Hundreds of thousands of people die, maybe more, and it could endanger the entire world. And I don't think I'm overstating that. I mean, what we're doing right now is so perilous. You have the Strait of Hormuz, which is responsible for somewhere in between 20 and 30% of global oil transit. And allegedly we are currently blocking, because the Iranians are willing to allow for oil to be traded in yuan to go through the strait right now. But any oil being traded in the US dollar, they're like, get fucked. Like they are attacking the petrodollar. They are going straight for the jugular because for them it's an existential war, and I don't blame them. But what I've heard now is that allegedly there are reports, it hasn't been verified, that ships are being attacked that are Russian, and that the Chinese ships have been stopped by American military. I don't know if that's accurate. So, but if that turns out to be true, I mean, this is an escalation on a scale that's crazy. And then just yesterday, there was a report that Putin was going to send oil to try and save the Cuban people who have been blockaded and haven't had any power for a big chunk of a couple months now. And like, they're dying. It's terrible. And there's talk about how Trump needs to stand up to Putin and sink an oil freighter from Putin to like a humanitarian freighter to Cuba. And I'm like, oh man, it's just such moral degradation across the board, and it sucks because I think even though I've been a libertarian forever and I've always really not loved my government, I have still always felt as if America was clearly the good guys, and I'm really feeling like we're not.
It's a valid question that I've heard a lot of people ask. And this is one of those moments where I try to pull everyone back from the cliff. And maybe some people won't like me for doing that, but here's how I look at that. When you say, are we the good guys? It can easily then be interpreted to a cancer of the entire system rather than a cancer of the few. A cancer of people who are in power positions across many places, by the way, in the United States, out of our 330 million people that actually live here, who have decided to take the reins and take control, in many cases unelected, by the way, and do things that are inherently evil, which include evil here and around the world. Secondly, I would say, to be self-critical on my own, listening to you talk a few minutes ago about like your worldview and when you were seeing things, I think I was late to the game on so many fucking things. I think a lot of this has to do with like one of the downsides of being an only child. There's a lot of upsides with that, but one of the downsides is like you have to try to figure some shit out for yourself, so you learn that skill. But then maybe you're molded by the things that are just kind of programmed around you, and you start to be like, it's just how things are, like it's what it is. Oh, kids are getting fucking 97 vaccines the second day after they're born. That makes sense. That used to make sense to me. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why, but like run the tape 6 years ago, that made sense to me, so there's like things that I'm catching up on. But one of these things, especially over the past year and a half, is where I roll with this question and ask myself, how deep does that cancer go here?
Yeah.
And I think it does go deep. I don't think it's stage 4.5 though, if you will. I think it's more of an aggressive stage 3, which is still bad. And it's something that we have to remove from the system. The problem is, where I lose hope is when you see like an outsider like Donald Trump, regardless of his political stances or like where he is on the spectrum, become, or maybe always was as a Trojan horse, like an ultimate insider. It's like, oh shit, like they're playing 5D chess up there, and they're going to make this stage 4 real fast. And there is, to quote The Sopranos, there is no stage 5, so does that kill America? And is that because we are the bad guys?
Well, dude, I'll match your stage. Yeah, it could, of course. And I'll match your stage 4 with stage 40 trillion national debt.
Yeah.
I mean, these are, and you don't know me well enough, but my background is finance actually. And you don't need to have a fucking finance background to know this. $40 trillion in debt, $1 trillion in interest alone. It's going to go up from there. And it's never coming back down. I mean, we're talking about basically consuming the entire tax revenue that we're currently taking in by 10, 15 years from now. Like, it could be to the point where we're literally just taxing our people to pay the interest, not including all of the necessary expenditures for everything else. I mean, we're really on the precipice. And I think that's the one thing that libertarians both get criticized too much for, but also don't get enough credit for, is that we're always fear-mongering, but we're also too early. So people don't take us seriously. We become Chicken Little, essentially, because we can see things coming so far in advance that by the time it happens, everybody says, yeah, Ron Paul was right about the real estate bubble. Ron Paul was right about the Iraq war. Ron Paul was right. But then you hear Ron Paul talking about the Iran war or talking about the dollar's death. And they're like,
he's not right this time.
Exactly. So I don't know. It's super dangerous, man.
You bring up, by the way, though, this is important because this shouldn't be lost in here. You brought up that point a few minutes ago about the Strait of Hormuz and them settling in Chinese currency over the U.S. Like,
huge.
You're a finance guy. The basic understanding there is that if you are letting the bricks slowly chip away at the dollar's placement in the world with every little 2-week, 3-week, 6-week, 8-week window we may give them with events like this for it to happen, you are one day closer to things not being closed around the world the way they are in U.S. currency, which then... you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that the debt actually explodes at that point because your currency starts to have a run on its own bank, if you will.
Yep. Big news coming out on silver right now. The U.S. government just added silver to the critical minerals list. What does this mean? This is an important list of minerals that are considered crucial for both industry and security, as well as economic viability. So when you buy silver to help protect your savings, you're also buying a critical mineral that is necessary for the United States and its economy to survive. That's why I want you to reach out to my partners over at Goldco. They're the #1 gold and silver company in the country, and they have 8,000 5-star reviews. And they have the best gold and silver offer in the country. So don't put this off. Don't ignore the facts. Get your free 2026 gold and silver kit from Goldco while you still can, and get up to 10% bonus gold or silver while supplies last. Go to clintlikesgold.com. That's clintlikesgold.com. One more time. clintlikesgold.com. Check out Goldco. Yep. And I'll make it a little bit more explicit for those that aren't in this arena at all. Like, all of the dollars that are used for global trade will not be used for global trade, and therefore they will be flooding back domestically because they'll have no use abroad, or they'll have less use abroad. Especially with the inflationary spiral, everyone will be exiting the dollar as fast as possible. So that's why it's called a bang moment. Like, this is what happens when empires fall. It's nothing, it's everything. Like, that's how it fucking goes down. It's a snap. Exactly. So yeah, Ron Paul hasn't been right yet, but I promise you Ron Paul's going to be right at some point, and you're not going to like it when he is. And that's where we're playing with fire. And this is why I've become so angry at our relationship with Israel, is because even though I think what they have done is morally reprehensible when it comes to the Gazans or the, so many of their neighbors, all of their neighbors. But from a more personal level, as someone whose primary concern is my friends, my family, my children, whenever I have them, is that you're fucking with that now. Like, you're jeopardizing that, because if the dollar dies, yeah, sure, I've got Bitcoin and all sorts of shit that I'll probably be all right. But like, that doesn't mean I'm living in a civilization that my kids will be safe in. It's going to be fucking hell. And we're doing this for no benefit to us. The Iran war has zero benefit to us. And it's literally jeopardizing and expediting the death of the dollar, which sacrifices the future of our country. Sorry, I'll get off the soapbox, but it's a big fucking deal.
Dude, no, it's a big fucking deal. And that was, that's what was crazy with the Ukraine thing, which was it is corrupt to the core. It's still going on. And like, I can't really find any good there. I mean, we could talk about that for like 2 hours. The only thing I can see that maybe some of these fucking masters of the universe were trying to think ahead on was to profit off of death, which is despicable, to try to protect like some of the US dollar value. And now it's even more sinister because they've essentially now taken that and basically thrown anything they did there in the fire because of what they're doing in Iran. So if you even got anything out of the desecration of a war that's now cost 1.8, 1.9 million fucking casualties out there in Ukraine, you have now even given that away.
Yeah.
So I don't, and the Epstein stuff, the latest drop, as someone who's looked at that case forever, it completely changed the paradigm for me, not just with that case, but far beyond it and what it means. Even the things that we don't know what it means yet, it's like there's a there, and you're like, holy fucking shit. It just makes you wonder who's really in charge here and what the end goal is. I don't know. For me, like, I mean, my job is public. I've been going through it like publicly. It's been like everything that I thought maybe, all right, that might make sense. No, it's just, now it's like, I don't even know if it's the other thing, but I don't know that it's this thing anymore.
Well, the problem is that every time you discard a hypothesis, the one that takes its place is much darker. It's like it just keeps getting scarier the further down the rabbit hole I go. And that's how I viewed Epstein too, is like, it's basically the secret ingredient that goes into the kind of, I don't know, the cloak that actually kind of controls everything. It's like, it's the glue that keeps it all together. Maybe, I mean, we still don't know for sure, but it does look as if it plays a role. And from that dude was he was like money laundering and weapons trafficking and doing all sorts of wild shit. Yeah, it's really crazy. Actually, I wanted to ask you about this because you and I don't interview people as often as you do. I used to do that. I do more solo shows now, but even with my solo show, it's still very important for me to try and analyze and decide who I think is for real or not. And Joe Kent, I have come to the conclusion that I think he's legit, or at least he's being honest about this topic. Whether or not he's got ulterior motives, I can't speak to that. But I'm convinced after my research that what he's saying is accurate.
My views did change. Being the director of the National Counterterrorism Center is probably the most senior rank I've held in the government. Because post 9/11, I was a true believer. I thought we needed to basically go to war with, any place in the Middle East that my government sent me. Halfway through or so, I got a little disillusioned and felt that we were lied to with Iraq. But in general, I still thought that they were like pretty decent partners. And look, I still to this day, I think that Israel can be a decent partner to America if we get our priorities straight. I saw members of the Israeli government come in and deal with us at that senior level, and the level of access that they had, especially in the lead up to the 12-day war. That opened up my eyes. Marco Rubio and even President Trump saying that, like, well, we had to go to war because the Israelis were. That tells you basically everything you need to know, even if you don't believe most of what I just said.
What actually brought you on my radar, like big time, was the Kiriakou interview. In 25, and I was like, holy shit. Like, so this is my question for you. As someone who interviews a lot of people, like, how do you know? Because Joe Kent was, as everybody knows, 11-time deployment, 6 Bronze Stars, incredible record. But he was briefly with the CIA in 2019.
He's ground branch, right?
I don't know exactly, but I just know that he went to some sort of CIA, operation in 2019, and then his wife died, and he got out allegedly. But like, the saying with CIA is like, you're never out. So I always try and be skeptical. So that's my question for you: is how do you judge someone like Kiriakou? Because he says a ton of shit that I agree with, and I want to trust him, and I want to believe he's a legit whistleblower, stand up, red, white, and blue guy now. But I'm always hesitant with anybody who was ever in the intel agencies,
and righteously so. I mean, you read books like Devil's Chessboard, and you're like, oh, okay, And again, this is even something now that I don't even know, because there's some of the more implications I've seen with like the Epstein stuff that's like, holy shit, it had to be more people than I previously thought who knew. So it's like, how do you know where a node is in a place like CIA versus what the system is? Meaning like how many people actually are complicit? Objectively, do I know there's people that work there that probably want to do the right thing and whatever? Sure. Do those people end up in power? Probably not. Yeah, probably not. So with a guy like John, all right, there's a few directions I want to take this. So there's a spectrum. The spectrum goes from one guy to another guy who have both been on my show a bunch and are both friends of mine. John Kiriakou to Andrew Bustamante. Okay. John Kiriakou was longtime true blue CIA, did everything from being a serious analyst at the beginning to going to the farm and then doing all the whole undercover spy shit, taking down Abu Zubaydah, whatever. Andy Bustamante tells the story, like went to the farm, failed at the very end, had to become an SOO. And then because his wife was a famous targeter or a very well-respected targeter at CIA, he eventually got to have a pretty crazy career because of that, and then did some things that were interesting in a country that you can't talk about. But different trajectories, different eras, and now different opinions on CIA, because John was basically made a whipping boy for a whole era that he was one of the few people who was on record behind the scenes having spoken out against, and I'm referring to the torture program that the CIA did. So kudos to him on that. We do know that. And they threw him in fucking prison. And maybe I'm a little bit biased because I talk with John a lot off camera, and I know some of the other things that he can't talk about publicly that like they did to him, and it's fucking disgusting. But now you see him talk about this stuff, and he can do two things. He can be analytical and analyze things where he's like, this makes sense from a spying perspective or from a domestic security perspective. And then he can also be like, what the fuck are these people doing? This is violating every constitutional right. It's complete bullshit. It makes us the bad guys in the United States. And you can say he's biased because they threw him in prison, but he brings a lot of evidence to his bias when he does that. So that's one end of it. The other end of it being Andy, going back to him, Andy, like I've always had this belief in doing the show. I want people from that world right where I can see them and where you can see them, which is in this seat right on camera for hours so that people can judge for themselves. And if they decide someone's a total dyed-in-the-wolf, fed, great. That's what we want to see. I'd rather have them sitting here so we can know what they think rather than wondering what they're thinking at this time without them being on camera. So Andy's kind of one of those guys. And I think it's a mixed bag, but like I've always said, I think Andy's still with CIA. I think he could pass a and I'm saying this like as a friend of the guy too. I think he could pass a polygraph if someone asked him, are you still in CIA? And he said no. Like I think he could pass because fucking 9/10 of CIA are people that walked out of Langley on a Friday, took a contract for 10 times the price in the private world, walked back in with a lanyard on Monday, and they don't work at CIA. So that's just kind of my thought on that. But, when I hear Andy talk about John, Andy will defend the fucking badge over and over and over, going to be like, and he like, when John, the funniest thing is when John and Andy talk about each other, they demonstrate that they actually don't really know about each other's background. So it's always like, oh God. But like when Andy's talking about John, he doesn't even understand the case. He doesn't even understand what they did to John. He's just defending the badge at all costs. And where I've taken issue with Andy publicly on this is that he says some things about the government or about the system that I know in his own life he completely disagrees with. So and it's not 100% of things, but it's like there's a 20-30% of things that I'm like, you don't really believe that. So why are you saying that? And so what I wonder is, because Andy's just a little node at CIA, he wasn't, like really high up and stuff like that. I wonder if that's a pressure thinking or if that's actively a part of it thinking. I think it's more of a pressure thinking. That's just my read. There's other people who will say that's Andy just being a good old propagandist or whatever, and they're allowed to say that. But, you know, with Kiriakou, I think, especially some of the stuff I talk with him off camera that people don't know about, if he were totally some op and full of shit, it would that would shock. That one would shock me. It just
that's how I feel about him too. For the record, I'm just saying, you know, we have to be skeptical. I mean, you know that there are obviously. I mean, this is very famous that the CIA controlled our nightly news. I mean, or at least they had influence in the script writing for some of the, you know, Cronkite or whatever. So to think that they wouldn't have jilted intel agencies that go into the podcast world to ultimately still push a script when necessary. Like, of course they're doing that, but that doesn't mean that Kiriakou's that guy. He could be for real. You know, I've become friends with Steve Friend. I don't know Kyle Seraphin all that well, but I've had him on my show. And it's like, these are the FBI whistleblowers that came out under the Biden administration. And like, I want to believe these guys so bad, but I'm still like, you're feds though. You know, like, you're feds though.
Yeah.
So I always keep my guard up. You know, I just keep my guard up. That's all.
I get it. I think you do have to keep your guard up for sure, because we've seen this where it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's a total propaganda campaign right there. Or we've seen people come out like the Trojan horse, and then suddenly you're like, wait a minute, who do you play for here? I try to treat it like I treat everyone else though, and it's hard to do because of all the shit we know. But I try to treat it like, let me judge it on an individual basis. At the same time though, you're always dealing with people who are highly trained at literally knowing how to lie.
Yeah, that's their fucking job.
Yeah, news for you. I'm not a mind reader. So, you know, it's tough. And I feel understand
like I'm really good at reading people, but I still, you know, like ultimately I got duped by Trump, you know, like not that I was never even close to a true believer, but I still felt like it was a 70-30 decision when it came to him versus Harris. You know, it was pretty easy for me. The entire woke, hegemonic, demonic thing that the Democrats were pushing, plus the proxy war, World War III in Ukraine. I was like, we got to change course. I don't give a fuck. We got to get out of here. And Trump puts together this incredible team of all these dissonant figures, or like appeared to be dissonant figures. And then and now we're in World War III in Iran potentially. And it's like, man, I got fucking duped. So anyways, the reason I bring all this up is because everything I've cross-checked about what Joe Kent has had to say, everything I can verify I have, and he's been telling the truth on. So like, for me, I want to believe in Joe Kent, but now I'm relying on fucking Nick Fuentes, because he was the one who said that don't trust Donald Trump. He is owned by Israeli donors, and now he sure looks like Nick Fuentes was right about that. Sorry, just being honest.
Hold on one sec. Whether or not it doesn't matter who's saying it. If there's evidence to that, if he's right, he's right. I don't like Nick Fuentes even a little bit, but like, Donald Trump was paid fucking $200 million by the Israel lobby a day after he was found guilty of those bullshit felonies in 2024. You think that was free?
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Definitely not. But the reason I bring it up is not even to you know, use Nick's opinion on it. It's just to say that the reason I'm taking Nick seriously is because he got that right when I got it wrong. So I'm extrapolating forward, and I'm saying Fuentes is very skeptical about J.D. Vance and Joe Kent. And he says that Joe Kent is a Peter Thiel creation, just the same as J.D. Vance. As you know, Peter Thiel was responsible for co-founding Palantir. And it just, as much as I want to trust Joe Kent, especially with him saying what I think is absolutely the fucking truth, that Israel led us by our nose into this war against Iran, but I'm still like, all right, but what is this really? Is this an angle? Are they trying to fucking put Ken up as the VP for Vance, and Vance is going to now come up and pretend as if he really opposed these wars? I guess what I'm saying is, once you get so deep into this, you actually get to the point where you can't trust anything or anyone, and it's really sad.
I think that's the point.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. If I were the people, it's impossible to think like these people because you're not. You're a normal fucking human being. But like, if I were the people running the world, as best as I can see the patterns of how they do things, if I realize that, then my sole goal would be to sow chaos and make people not trust anything so that I could spread out the blame. Okay, I could spread out the blame from me all the way down to basic run-of-the-mills institutions that actually don't really affect anything, but people think they do. And we're in that era now, because that's all the elites got left, like the elite of the elite, the Bilderberg type people. That's what they got left. And so, yes, I mean, I don't know Joe Kent personally. It's only been a week of us seeing him. Could be a great actor. I don't know. I will tell you, without having sat down with him personally, I did find him incredibly measured when he talked with Tucker Carlson. And I also I don't know if this is going to be a good take or bad take. This is just how I've always looked at it too. I've dealt with a couple of the Ground Branch guys before. I do view that differently. I view that differently than when I'm dealing with like a Bustamante or a Kiriakou type, like a case officer, like true blue CIA. When someone was like 20 years in the fucking special forces and then they go basically do Ground Branch where they're just taking the same skills and now they're just read in to go capture and kill people sometimes, No,
that's definitely a different thing. Quick interlude. I just wanted to let you guys know, I don't think I've ever told you this, but I will be a guest on Tom Woods' cruise. So August 22nd through the 29th, leaving from Boston and sailing to Canada. Yeah. How cool is that? 7 days, myself, Tom Woods, Scott Horton, Josie, the redheaded libertarian, will be there. I'm sure a ton of other people, but out of those four, there's got to be someone you'd like to go on a vacation with. So this is your opportunity. Go to tomwoodscruise.com. That's tomwoodscruise.com. I don't know if there's a promo code. I think it's lockdown. If so, yeah, if there's a promo code, use that, lockdown. If there's not, just let them know that I sent you. I don't get paid for it. I would just like for some of the people on that boat to be listeners of this show, because that would be cool. All right, tomwoodscruise.com. Get your tickets. It'll probably sell out, so grab them when you can. That's a really
I think it's a different culture. I got to be open to being wrong about that. But, with Kent, there's nothing he said that doesn't make sense looking at the ticker tape as we can see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like just looking at it objectively.
Yeah. No, that's exactly where I'm at with it. And it may turn out that he's doing it for other ulterior motives, and I'll then reassess everything that he's had to say as a consequence of that. But as of now, it feels as if he's just doing the right thing at great personal expense and honestly facing jail time, similar to Kiriakou. It's like I personally, I don't think that he leaked. Certainly, I don't think he leaked anything classified. I think there's a chance that he leaked those text messages to Candace, but she denied it. He denied it. So I guess we'll see, TBD on that. But as of now, I'm just going to take it with as best I can analyze and come to the conclusion that it looks like he's telling the truth right now. We'll just see where it goes.
Yeah. It's also like every accusation becomes a projection. That's why I when I was younger, when I was like in college and then right after college, those were my like political times. So I was a liberal, and then I was like a 2016 Trump conservative. And then I kind of had my black pill moment, if you will. I didn't know what it was called at the time, in about late 2017. And it, I don't need to get into what caused that and everything. I've talked about that before, but it's the one thing in my life, maybe the only thing, because all I do is I constantly wake up and I'm like, well, that's not what I thought it was, with everything. But it is the only thing that through all the ups and downs since then, which is almost a decade now, I have felt some personal zen on, which is that there really is no left and there really is no right. Yes, there's ideologies. Yes, there's people who have wildly different solutions, from socialism to libertarianism and everything in between. But at the end of the day, people want all the same things. And at the end of the day, a Uni-Party system finds a way to distract people with the things that you think matter the most, while they simultaneously take care of the things behind closed doors that really matter the most. And you know, that's what it feels like right now with everything that we've seen over the past decade, more than that. And in particularly when you see all the things that the Trump campaign righteously, in many cases, called out the previous White House for, and that was the White House running for office, you know, whether it be gaslighting on masks, gaslighting on the pandemic, gaslighting on the vaccine, which he laid off a little bit because he was, you know, the godfather of Operation Warp Speed and all that, gaslighting on Ukraine, gaslighting on fucking gender, gaslighting on, I mean, you insert the blank. We saw Karine Jean-Pierre get out there every day, and it was just like, how many times can I lie today? That's what it was, you know? Now, many of those things, not necessarily the same things like gender or something like that, but many of the same ideas in a different lens, they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And that part, the degree of that, the degree of the obviousness of that has surprised me a little bit. But the idea that that is what happened didn't surprise me at all. I mean, it's just, this is what it's what these people do. And I don't think anyone gets in there. Like, one of the reasons that Trump really, as a young kid, appealed to me in 2015 was because of how real he was and off the cuff.
Right.
And then he started taking money because it got real, and he got into the real case, and you started to see, not at first, but over time, you saw some changes in how he did things. That said, looking back on his first administration before the pandemic hit, which was a whole fucking thing, right? You know, it was chaotic. He wasn't organized in how to run a White House. He ran it like a reality show, and there were a lot of issues. But like, the sun came up, the lights were on.
It was
things were okay. Some of the foreign policy was actually pretty decent. That was one place where I had given him some credit for, but in the past, we didn't necessarily.
When he crossed the DMZ, that was fucking huge. I was really impressed with that.
Yeah,
I don't know where that guy went.
We didn't start foreign wars and stuff. And the guy who spoke in 2015 about, you know, Saddam Hussein was a bad guy. Look what happened after. Like, he was still there. And then something happened between these terms, or at the start of this term. I don't know. And anything that was decent about Trump and being different, most of it seems to have gone out the window.
Yeah.
And it goes back to those different doors we talked about earlier. Like, are you in on it? Are you blackmailed? Or did you want to see it happen the whole time? I don't know if it's a combination of all that, but one thing about Donald Trump that's very strange is that there has never been a person in the history of politics more obsessed with polls than him. And he is the kind of guy who's taught by Roy Cohn, for better or worse, about strength and leaning on power of crowds and dynamics. He's the kind of guy that when you look at his career, the minute he could legitimately see that the scales had tipped in one direction or another, all he needed was 51% on a set issue. He knew he could go all the way in on it because he had just enough, and he could push more people onto that side with the momentum of his press down. And yet, on at least two unbelievably key issues, and now three, arguably the three most key issues of the current administration at this moment, Donald Trump consistently in his second term has decided to land on not just the complete opposite side of a 51 to 49 poll, the complete opposite side of a fucking 80 to 20 poll. And that is more than that in some cases. That is Epstein, Israel, and the Iran war.
Yep.
Okay. Like, he has decided to go out of his way to praise the opposite opinion of not only what a lot of his base wants, but what a lot of people want in general.
Yep.
And it's like, you know, maybe he's old. He's fucking 80 years old. Maybe he's fucking losing it. Very possible. maybe he's just lost his fastball, or, you know, maybe there's some other things that are going on here that we can't see. And you have to wonder that with the Epstein files. You do. You know, I had defended him in the past, even when I didn't like the guy. Like, I was still defending him based on some of the evidence we had about Epstein, like him going out of his way to be one of the few people who was shouting it from the rooftops, which is true. He was shouting it before a lot of other people. He was shouting it when fucking Alex Jones was shouting it, right? Is that just projection because you're in on it and you're trying to get out in front of it? Certainly have to wonder that, you know. They've deleted 47,000 files in the last few weeks, including some that have allegations against them, which might not be true, but like that, why would you do that? You know, you got nothing to hide. Why would you do that?
Yeah, well, they went way out of their way to cover up his involvement. But also, even if you don't go down the Epstein path, the Butler, Pennsylvania path is very fruitful, in my opinion. I mean, if you believe it's real, which obviously some people still believe it was a major psyop and blah, blah, blah. I believe that guy behind him got killed. I believe that there was rounds that were fired. I've dug very deep on this, and I'm convinced that actually did transpire. So you'd have to believe that Donald Trump was willing to let live rounds be fired past him. I don't fucking believe that for a second. So you have to wonder. I mean, we don't know fucking anything about Crooks. We don't know anything about the motive, the backdrop. Of course, the lone shooter who barely misses ends up dead, so you can't question him. His entire social media footprint is wiped. They haven't even fucking attempted to give us a narrative. They're just like, move on. It's the closest thing we've had to a presidential assassination in decades and decades and decades. And they don't even want to talk about it. It's like it didn't even happen. And Trump doesn't want to talk about it either. And you know he wants to talk about it because like it makes him look so heroic and shit, right? So the fact that he doesn't talk about it makes you feel like there's something really fucking deep there. Now, this is all just like reading tea leaves. You know, nothing is firm conclusion from what I'm coming up with, but I don't know how you look at that and you don't go like everything that he was running on, everything he seemed to be about all got put to the back burner as soon as that fucking bullet grazed his head. And that's where I'm at with it. I think it's a distinct possibility.
I think it is too. This is where I would love to have been a fly on the wall for when the knock comes on the door and I don't know who's on the other side of that knock. Maybe it's a normal knock. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's people I'm not thinking of right now. I don't know. But Donald Trump is the embodiment of the I showed up to my greatest hater's funeral just to make sure that motherfucker dead meme. All right? Like, including not for the better, like for the worse. Like he can't read a room sometimes with just when to shut the fuck up, even about people that he doesn't like.
He's like 50 Cent buying out front row at Ja Rule's concert.
Yes, he's like, he was 50 Cent before 50 Cent with
Exactly.
grudges. He still has grudges against people that have been dead for 40 years. And you're telling me that a 20-year-old who shot him and grazed his ear and tried to take him out, he don't want to talk about that guy? Get the fuck out of here. No, and that doesn't mean like, it doesn't have to mean like, oh, he's in on it or something. But why is that? What does he know? What has he been told? And who has told him it that makes him go, I can't touch that one? You know, you can make a lot of accusations about Donald Trump. You can't say he ain't got some fucking alpha in him. He does. Right. He's a natural kind of alpha dude. Why is he such a beta on that? It doesn't make sense. I agree. I'm a podcaster, bro. I don't fucking know like what it is, but it could be a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, let me play off of what you said earlier. You said there's three things that he's totally flipped on, and it's Israel, Iran, and Epstein. Well, let me reframe that. It's Israel, Israel, Israel. Those all have major Israel angles. I mean, the Iran war is purely for Israel. Epstein, his relationship to Israeli intelligence, there's other intelligence involvement, of course, but his relationship to Ehud Barak and all these like that's clearly an Israel angle. And then Israel obviously has to do with Israel. So there you go. There's your three, dude. And like, if you connect those dots, if you say Butler, maybe Crooks wasn't, the guy, or maybe it was him, but he was fucking working for them. I don't know how anyone looks at that and says, that's crazy to think. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying you have to give that a viable possibility. You have to, or you're just not being honest about it. That's how I feel.
I agree. And listen, you got to have tough conversations in a world where many things are at stake, including a lot of lives. And these are these tough conversations, and it needs to happen more than it is, and I'm from New Jersey. I'm not exactly a fan of Chris Christie, who was the governor of the state for a while, but he's been talking more recently about his history with the Kushners, which is verifiable fact. He was the prosecutor in the mid-2000s. He did run the case against Kushner's father, who is the fucking ambassador to France right now, which is insane. The facts of the case were crystal clear as to what that was. The types of shit that guy was doing, crystal clear, far beyond just, a fucking blackmail hooker tape, which that sounds like a familiar tactic. I don't know.
It does.
Familiar. But, to see the influence that Jared has on the White House, it's also very interesting that if you remember, at the end of the last White House, after January 6th, shortly after, Jared Kushner and Ivanka Kushner released a joint statement saying they were stepping back from political life and didn't want to be involved. As far as I know, Ivanka has kept to that. Jared has done the complete opposite. Jared's suddenly the fucking world's greatest negotiator who can't negotiate shit. He's going over there and negotiating with the Iranians while they're fucking hitting him on the pager, the fucking iPhone saying, yeah, we're about to drop a bomb up their ass. And he's like, run it, and it's impossible. Like, here's my thing, Clint. When you have the national security advisor of the UK flippantly, openly, nonchalantly, it's not like breaking news, saying something like, yeah, I was present at the negotiations. Iran made some decent offers, but the problem is Kushner and Witkoff, the U.S. negotiators, are Mossad assets. Does that automatically mean he's right? No. But think about how far we've gotten that the national security advisor for the UK is casually telling The Guardian, like, yeah, they work for Mossad, so what do you expect? They got bombed. Oh, well.
Yep. Well, and it would be less believable if it weren't for the fact that the Omanian, I always forget how to say it, but the Oman negotiators who were middlemaning these most recent round of negotiations, because we had already blown them up during the last negotiation. So they're like, all right, bring in the Oman guys so that we can have a third party. They're saying the same thing. They're like, the Iranians offered fucking everything. And basically Witkoff and Kushner again tanked it. And then they fucking murdered the negotiators. It's like, then you have the UK guy saying that. It's like, yeah. I mean, what other conclusion can you come to? And then you add in the fact that fucking Jared Kushner had Bibi Netanyahu sleeping in his bed when he was a kid. The fuck out of here.
It's crazy. And you trace Jared Kushner hanging around Leon Black for decades at this point, hanging around Ghislaine Maxwell. I can pull up these pictures, right? Hanging around all these people in the Epstein files, him and his brother, particularly his brother, where Epstein clearly has a relationship with them. Like at some point, Clint, I'm not a biologist, but walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, fucks like a duck, swims like a duck. It's a duck. And I don't know why this is so hard for people to see, but and it pains me because he's from New Jersey. I don't like selling out my own people, but
well, if it makes you feel any better, he doesn't consider you his people at all, in my opinion. Here, I'm going to run this clip from Alex about Bongino, another fraud.
They call him a traitor and attacking him. It's disgusting. And Dan Bongino attacking Joe Kent. I mean, it is just so cowardly. Absolutely disgusting. I don't even want to attack Bongino. He has just become such a shameful person. But he's just bought and paid for by the Israel lobby, folks. And I just, I'm not the guy that says everything's Israel, but now it is Israel. Everything people worried about, things that Pat Buchanan was worried about on foreign policy, he was right about, but he never thought they'd actually run the whole government. And they're doing it all against their own interests, folks. In the end, Israel's own interest. Netanyahu's thinking about staying in power. And, with sales plan of greater Israel and stuff. It's delusional.
So Alex has been a major holdout on this topic, and he is. My read on Alex has been, as a longtime fan of his, you probably were inspired by him to get into this world, because most of us were. But a longtime fan of Alex Jones, I was very disappointed in him, and my read of it was he was carrying water for the Trump administration because he was facing $1 billion in fines, and he felt as if he had basically received a reprieve almost by Donald Trump winning in 24. So he's going to be as optimistic and spin things as positively as possible. But even that guy, Alex Jones, who for the past year had been carrying water for the Trump administration, is just saying it flat out. He's like, Dan Bongino was clearly compromised by the Israel lobby. It's like crystal clear. So I just think we're at this tipping point where like either you're going to be honest about these things or your audience is just not fucking with you. Like they just don't care what you have to say. And I think that's healthy. I think it's a good thing.
Bongino was one we had when I was talking with Mike Yeagley in episode 351 back in October, I was saying that was the guy I was watching. So I always made fun of Dan Bongino. Like he was like a really, look at all this shit, like had to show his vein would be popping on camera and whatever. And obviously he and I have a lot of political differences, but like I respected the fact that, he left his life where he's making a lot of money to go, I guess, try to clean up the FBI. I didn't really know what he worked in Secret Service. I wasn't really sure of the qualifications, but I'm like, hey, it can't be worse than it was, right? Like, good for him, And then I would watch him come out in these interviews next to Kash Patel while he was working there, and he looked like a hostage.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I mean, that vein in his forehead, instead of anger, was just like stress. Where you're like, bro, like, do you want a Xanax? Like relax. And it felt like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. And so the popular thing right now would be to just shred Dan Bongino. If you looked at my Twitter, maybe you think I am, but like, I feel bad for him a little bit. And maybe I won't, maybe I'll just realize he's in on it at some point for sure. But when I see Dan Bongino, like the video I saw the other night, where, he was confronted in public and you just see this dude who used to be this like really tough guy just reduced to rubble. He is a broken man. His soul is shattered, in my opinion. I don't know the guy. It's just how it looks to me. He is completely destroyed. And I want to know what it is that destroyed him. Maybe it is as simple as like they blackmailed him. I don't know, but there's clearly dark things. I mean, this isn't inventing any kind of fucking wheel right here. There's obviously extremely dark things that happen behind the scenes, and I guess you can't fully know what that is until you deal with it. But like, does that make you then a coward for carrying water for it afterwards, or are there things that someone like that knows through what he saw that realizes this is the least worst decision? I don't know. I'd like to give a human being the opportunity to not be a total fucking scumbag, but yeah, there's a chance that he is being like a total coward. It's very possible, but I feel bad that, like, I don't know. Like, it's a very different feeling than I used to have in the past looking at him where it's like, oh God, what's this guy going to say now? Now it's like, damn, you're really broken. What happened?
Yeah, well, look,
do you need to talk to somebody?
It speaks highly to your humanity to try and see the humanity in someone like Dan Bongino, but I got to be honest with you. I'm not there yet. I'm in the mode of this guy made his name off of pretending to be the badass, the guy that will go into the fucking fire and deal with the corruption. And then he went in there, he did fuck all. And then he covered up a human trafficking ring, whether or not you believe it's, all the way down to very, very young girls, whatever. It was definitely human trafficking and definitely a spying and blackmail operation, as far as I can tell, amongst other things. And then it's like, and then you fucking come back out and then you smear someone like Joe Kent. Like, I can't fuck with this guy at all. And as far as I'm concerned, everywhere he goes, that ought to be the treatment he receives. Like in a sane world, it shouldn't just be him though. It should be Rubio and JD Vance and Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard. Oh my God, I'm so disappointed in her. And basically everybody that's still in this administration who isn't doing the right thing, who isn't taking the opportunity to stand up and speak unpopular truths in a time when we desperately need it, when the war is, on the brink of turning into something really catastrophic. Like, that's why I'm going to respect Joe Kent despite his brief stint with the CIA and just take him at face value at this junction, because like, that's what we need to see. If we don't back up a guy like that, then why would you expect anybody else to go out there, put their neck on the line and tell the truth when we need it most? So
yeah, see, the thing I just said before that, if it's clipped up, won't be my full thoughts. It'll be taken out of context and I'll get killed for it and probably deserve it. But to give you a larger picture of that, what I'm getting at, I'll just use an example, something we know about here. What if they went to people like Bongino and said, hey, Malaka, you familiar with the Samson option?
Right.
Shut your mouth.
It's a distinct possibility, but still.
And if that is the case with all these people, and I found that out in the afterlife, I would apologize to them for all the ripping I'm doing of them.
No,
because that's somehow even worse.
I think that's probably the only angle at which their decision making makes sense. I completely agree with your analysis on him, and I'm at my core, like, I want to be sympathetic to it, but it's just like, we don't have time for that. Like, does that make sense? Like, we needed heroes, we needed heroic action. These guys pretended to be that, and then they get into the position where they have, by all appearances, the power to be that, and then they're fucking just absolutely not. And worse, they're actually demonizing the few people who are behaving in a heroic fashion, like Thomas Massie or Joe Kent. And it's just like, all right, like at this. So I do want to go back to your point though of the Samson option. Like, I think that's a distinct possibility. I really do. I believe it's a real thing. But that gives whole new meaning to Whitney Webb's One Nation Under Blackmail. I mean, that means the world is under blackmail at that point. And at what point do we just say, okay, maybe you do have nukes that are set up on a hair trigger sitting under LA and Miami and New York and who knows where else, right? Are we just going to let this nation of 10 million people control the globe in fear in perpetuity? Like, I don't know. It just seems like at some point, even if it ends up in catastrophe, we can't function like that forever.
It's so strange too, because it's like at the end of the day, we shouldn't even be having this conversation, because you got a nation of 9 million people. I don't even have their GDP in front of us, but it's nowhere near ours, right? That, has a distinct part of their government that's just kind of insane and is causing all these problems with us. And it's like when you're out on a boat in Jersey. We have greenheads up here. Are you familiar with those?
Mm-mm.
Greenhead flies, the motherfuckers, they eat you alive. They're terrible, right? It's like a greenhead that you just can't just be like, go to the other boat or whatever while you're trying to sail and focus on catching the shark out here, which to me is like a country with a GDP north of 20 trillion a year like China. So it's like we can't even focus on the thing that actually is like a full threat, because we're getting our ass fucking bit all over the place by a country that's supposed to be an ally, right? Like, it's very annoying. The moral of that story, I don't know if that's the best visual, but it's extremely annoying to me, because I'm wasting my time here, and then I'm wasting my time with people who then also may be doing some fucking really sinister blackmail just to make sure we do the little things, air quotes there, that they need done, that's going to be at our own expense too. I don't fuck with that. And that's why, again, you want to take things just like you said, and you're right about this, with a grain of salt. Most people have known who Joe Kent is for like a week. I only knew who he was because he followed the show. I don't know if that was a good thing or bad thing that the director of counterintelligence followed my show on multiple platforms, but whatever. I didn't know like a fuck ton about him or anything like that. So we're seeing what we can right now. Maybe it turns out he's a fucking lizard person like 6 months from now. I don't know. I hope he's not. But like, you have to take what you can see right now. And like we said earlier, does it look like some of the things he's saying, like the math is mathing? And it looks like the math is mathing, and then even 6 days later, this played out again. Like everything, what he said on Tucker about how this goes, where it's like, well, you have to kind of corral the Israelis to get them on board and make sure they follow directions. You see Trump put out that all caps tweet or Truth Social, whatever the fuck it is, where he's like, typos and all, we're negotiating with Iran for a period of 5 days, whatever. We're talking with people. And a half hour later, the Israeli Air Force announces, and I ratioed them on Twitter, which is kind of funny, but they announced that like they've begun a whole new round of strikes on all the shit that Trump said in his letter they weren't going to do. And so again, I ask, why is this small nation fucking shitting all over our president when he goes to do something, to the point that then he's on the tarmac 3 hours later, and not only does he not call them out, but when he gets asked who he's negotiating with in Iran, he's like, well, I don't want to tell you because I don't want them to end up dead. Who the fuck would be killing them? We all know. Just say it. Just fucking say it. Like, what? Who do I gotta fuck for Donald Trump to call? That's a bad term to use with this whole example. But to call up Benjamin Netanyahu and say, you do that again, you're out.
Yeah, man.
I don't know why this is so hard.
Well, that's the whole reason we spent the first hour talking about whether it was Butler, whether it was Epstein. Like, it's something. Like, it's obviously something, because especially as much of a fucking egotist as Donald Trump is, anybody else were to undermine Trump the way Netanyahu has, he would be demolishing them.
Dead.
I mean, and he just never does. He just constantly backpedals. Like, he'll get angry for a second and he'll be like, all right, I gotta backpedal off this. And that's what he does over and over and over again. And it's amazing to me that there are any people who continue to defend this. Like, if you're actually paying attention to the stuff that you and I are talking about right now, I don't know how you come to any other conclusion. Like, I say this every fucking week. It feels like I'm friends with Tim Pool. Like, in real life, I like Tim a lot. He's a good guy, but I don't know how he doesn't see what you and I see about this. like for the life of me, I can't figure it out. And then it just makes me feel as if, it's his lane that he's in. He's got a reporter at the White House doing press briefings now. He wants to have on congressmen. He wants to have on JD Vance. He had Donald Trump on his show. It's like he chose that lane. And even though I think at his core, he's an honest guy who wants to do right by the country and by people, it just seems like there's a conflict of interest there that just forces his brain to shut the fuck off when he sees stuff that is so obviously a problem, like a deep, deep problem. And it's not just him. I just bring up Tim because he's one of the few guys I actually know in real life and like. But this is like pervasive. And then there's obviously the layer of payola and money that's going out to other influencers that are like literally writing their scripts. It just makes for a very dark time. I will say though, on the positive side, it has opened up lanes for people like you and I that never would have existed. And it has, I mean, the fact that you look at the top 5 political podcasters in America, I don't think you're there yet, but you're getting up there. It's like you've got Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly. There's one other I'm blanking on, but like
Sean,
Shapiro
probably.
and all. What's that?
Sean, probably. Sean Ryan.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I just don't think of him as purely political, even though I probably should. But anyways, like the more like clearly right wing political commentators that are in the top 10, all of them are against this war, and I just think they're trying to pretend as if the podcast world doesn't matter, even though clearly the podcast world is what got Trump back into power. But I think the more important thing right now is that the highest profile people, the people with growing audiences, like everybody else is diminishing. Like even though you and I aren't in the top 10, we're fucking growing. Like everybody else, Shapiro and all these guys, Levin, they're they're basically non-entities. They're going to be total non-entities in a couple of years. So I guess in the short term, it's very frustrating, but like in the long term, I think that we're headed in the right direction. I don't know. I'm trying to fucking find something positive to talk about here.
Yeah, and I think about the long term always, and that's what I do. And to be clear, like, I'm not a political podcaster. You've seen me, like, you and I connected because you've seen the recent, like, Iran and Epstein thing. The Epstein thing is simultaneously the easiest and hardest story I've ever covered. It's the hardest because it's the darkest shit I've ever seen, and it has changed my worldview on like how things actually work. It is the easiest because it is the most bipartisan story of my lifetime. They're all guilty, left, right, indifferent. I am completely free to shred people. It's fucking amazing because my podcast is dead fucking down the middle. I bring people from all different sides of the spectrum. And this is no shot at all to people, but if we're talking about my podcast like I were a Megyn Kelly or a Tucker Carlson or something like that 5 years from now, I failed. Because that's not what I want to do. I take the journalistic integrity very seriously. That's why I said at the outset, this issue of the Iran war, where my guys, our guys, are now going over there and dying. This is, again, it's very similar to Epstein. It ain't left. It ain't right. It's a fucking issue for our lives and the future of America as it fucking stands. And the left and right is largely against this. And I think it's a moment where there can be a little bit of unification. It's the funniest thing ever. The two things that like Trump is like three things that Trump is so off on are the things that like the left and the right largely agree with. Iran, Israel, and Epstein. They're all on it. They're all like, let's go. Like literally the dude wearing the Nam hat and the chick with pink hair and a nose ring agree on these things. Yep. It should be a kumbaya, my lord session, but it's not. And that's where I'm trying to play a role to do that. But like, yeah, I think to dovetail off what you're saying, where I think you're right, is it is an incredible moment to be able to cover something honestly with incredible evidence and right the wrongs of coverage of things in the past, like Iraq and like Vietnam. Mm-hmm. That is how I see this. And I don't give a fuck what part of the spectrum someone's on. If they are willing to do that and actually see the information and see what's going on here and cover it, they're my friend on this issue. And I'm okay with that. And if I have to put aside a little bit of bias if I have to inject a little bit of bias, like I said earlier, I am on this issue, and put aside a little bit of journalism to do that, this is the type of situation I would do that. And it's the first time in my career I've done it, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. And I didn't bring up those names to put you in the same camp. I was just saying, I think why it's meaningful is that even though those are all right-wing influencers or commentators, is that they're all going against President Trump. They're all going against this war. They're all actually stepping out of line. And I think that demonstrates
respect for it.
It's huge. It's huge.
Fuck yeah.
But
I think, see, by the way, seeing like Megyn Kelly talk about this so hardcore over the last few months has been like shocking to me. Yeah. And good on her, because I mean she's a tough woman, bro. Like she don't take any shit. But regardless of where she stood on shit, like she knows how to stand up for herself. And this is a hard place to stand up for yourself when, you know, we also had so much other shit happen a couple years ago where she had to, you know, put her spin on it, and correctly so. And in many cases, I think with the evidence lines up with that. And now it's like, wait a minute. Now those same people are doing some. It's tough in that situation, I'm sure, to backpedal. And I think she finds a way to run right into it, which is a really that's an impressive skill.
Yeah, well, and I think it's honestly courageous. I got to meet her for the first time, I don't know, 5 months ago or something like that in Miami, and I only had a couple minutes to talk to her, and literally all I said to her was like, "Tell the truth, never kneel," because she was really under fire because she was not willing to abandon her relationship with Tucker Carlson, and she wasn't willing to basically rewrite the history of her friend Charlie Kirk, right? And or give up on her friendship, or not even friendship. She just wasn't willing to basically pile on to the Candace Owens hate wagon. And she was being attacked from all angles at that time. So I had a couple minutes, and that's all I said to her. And she just looked me in the eye, and she's like, "I really appreciate that." And it seemed sincere. You never know, right? But the fact that she's gone on to be like, to not kneel, to tell the truth, to stand up when it matters, I was like, fucking awesome. You know, it makes me feel really good. And especially because, you know, my mom is such a huge fan of her. You know, my mom listens to my show a little bit, but like, she loves Megyn Kelly. So for Megyn Kelly to be on our side on this particular war has helped me a lot. The fact that Tucker Carlson's doing it, you know, I reach 100,000 people per show or something. Tucker Carlson reaches millions, right? So it makes a big difference. So I try and both be defensive and boost anybody who I think is telling the truth. They don't have to agree with me, but just if they're trying to tell the truth, like, you're my people. And that's what I identified with you right away. I was like, oh, this guy is fucking about it, you know? And I think
I'm trying. I don't want, and I really, that's a huge compliment, man. And I really, really appreciate that. At the same time, I think, you know, I'm going to put the ideas out there the best I can, but listen, for every hot take, there's a cold take too. So I think people have to do their own work on everything as well. Just because, you know, my show might be entertaining and stuff like that doesn't mean I'm nailing everything by any stretch of the imagination, but I am doing my best to, like, where I see things that are like evil. All right, let's shine a light on, especially things where if it's like in the past, I assumed it wasn't. Let's right that. Let's right that wrong, at least personally, like on my end.
Well, of course, man. And I think that's what makes, you know, the industry, whatever this thing is that we do, so special to me. Is like, I was inspired to get in this lane because I got sick of the lies. I was just so sick of being lied to constantly. I was so sick of seeing my country destroyed based off of lies and having media apparatchiks that were perpetuating these lies shamelessly and still fucking existing, still like not going away in shame, but just continuing to be not just present, but fucking very high profile liars, like overt liars who got everything wrong for fucking decades. And then suddenly with the Rogan wave and then everything else after that, it's just like we're washing out so many just morally decrepit individuals. Yeah. And now we're actually into the second wave, in my opinion, where a lot of the people that came in the Rogan wave are now also being proven to be frauds and liars and bought out and sold out and who blackmailed potentially. And now hopefully they're going to be replaced too. And I already complimented you once, but I'm going to say it again. I think you're one of those guys who is in that second wave now that's like, actually it's cresting. And I feel like we have a real chance to break the back of it used to be corporate news that we were trying to break the back of. Now it's like, no, we need to break the fucking back of the indie news who's actually corporate. Like that's the new war that we're in.
I haven't heard someone else put this so eloquently, but I think about this every day. There's this weird thing that happened where simultaneously you had independent media rise as the equal but opposite reaction to the mainstream media and the sins of mainstream media and everything that they did wrong. And the renegade rise gave rise to all these people who were like, yeah, we're the rebels. And then slowly the audience moved here, and the rebels, just by numbers for a second, stay with me here, became the establishment.
Right.
But then they actually decided that they wanted some of those things. And here's what I mean by that. How many fucking podcast sets do you see now that look like they're trying to be what they think the mainstream would do with some big studio that have fucking 40 people with headsets behind there? You see a lot more of that now. I sleep on the other side of this wall. When people come over here, I don't always have a shirt on. There's protein powder on the counter sometimes, and like occasionally I forget that there's not toilet paper in the other bathroom. It's my bad. I got to do a better job with that. But like I go about my life. There's no difference from day one, over 6 years ago when I was in my parents' house and decided to do this. And that's the thing I always talk about with my guys about. I'm like, if we ever lost that, put 3 in the back of my head. Like it's over. It's over. There has to be like, I think part of it is people take themselves so fucking seriously. And it's like, I sit in here with someone, it's almost never live, right? So, we turn on cameras, no one knows it's happening. We talk. We turn off the cameras. Later, I hit this magic button that says upload, and I walk away, and I come back, and there's some numbers on the screen.
Right.
You know, like but the rest of my life stays the same. And I think that some of the purity has been lost in a lot of independent media. And I also think this is a conversation, I'll never forget this one. I had a conversation with my buddy, Tommy G. You familiar with him? On YouTube?
Nope.
Tommy G he's a documentarian on YouTube, does amazing work. He's been on my podcast a bunch, really close friend of mine. But I was talking with him the night of Trump's inauguration in 2025. And I said to him, this is a real critical moment for independent media right now. And he said, how so? And I said, you know, I wasn't faulting the guys in my industry. I do not like throwing stones from glass houses. I get it. It was a huge cultural moment, all that. Like the last administration, we already went through all the ways they gaslit people, like not the least of which was censorship and the dangers that was. That is crystal fucking clear. So that's a positive with Trump coming in. We've at least seen like that loosen up, I would say, to this point. I will give him credit on that. Like I would say the landscape's a lot different in that respect. So you, of course, people in independent media, people way bigger than me, by the way, understandably saw the importance of that. And then maybe they attend the inauguration and all that. But I said, you know, I don't think you control where you get seated at the inauguration, but I said Trump likes Joe Rogan a lot. So they seated him like basically just off the dais right there. And I said to Tommy, I said, you and I both know if that were Kamala being sworn in and that were Anderson Cooper sitting there instead of Joe Rogan, everyone would be shredding him and they'd be 1,000% right to do it. Now, do I think that Joe Rogan is at all complicit in a way that like an Anderson Cooper is? Absolutely not. But we live in a world, Clint, whether I like this or not, and to be clear, I fucking hate this, but we live in a world where how things look matter more than how things are at the outset. And I fucking hate that, but that is what it is. And so I'm like, we got to be careful with the cozying up and all that, you know, like, yes, and crazy cultural moment and all that, but you don't want to make the same mistakes from the other side, maybe, that mainstream media made that made you be created in the first place. That's why when you look at any revolution, the day after the revolution, they are the fucking conservative establishment. Right? The anarchist liberals become the fucking, if you do anything, we're going to take your head off. That's just human history and what it is. But I think about this a lot. I've certainly made my own mistakes, but like I try to keep that as a North Star, especially, by the way, when it's way easier for me to do that. Case in point, all these guys who interviewed Trump on the way there on the campaign trail, all the big boys, that wasn't an option for me. If I had called up to try to get an interview with Trump, they would have been like, who the fuck? Get the fuck out of here. Call the Secret Service. We got another one. You know, like it wasn't even an option. So easy for me to say like, oh, I wouldn't have done that or whatever. But the way that gets spun later, which I think is unfair, by the way, because all these shows invited Kamala and she refused to come on. So it's unfair. True. But the way it gets spun later fucks up how you can stand on an issue because you get these ad hominem attacks that are unfair, but it's just the way it is. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I would like to think that if I hadn't had a guarantee that both of them would have come in, I wouldn't have done it. But I don't fucking know that. You know, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, for sure, I definitely would have said, sorry, Donald. She said no, so we're not doing it. That said, I'm dropping episode 400 tomorrow, and I've always had a rule. Won't say it'll never change, but it's been consistent for 6 years. No politicians. I was just talking with one the other day, someone who's running for office that would do insane views. Someone I also, on another issue that's not having to do with them running to office, I just think has an amazing story. And I was like, fuck, man, I'm sorry. I can't do it. You're running for office, you know, like, and it's just, I have to be able to criticize or praise with no skin in the game. I have to be able to look at these people from the outside of the aquarium instead of swimming in the bowl with them. And that also includes what I do at the ballot box. That's why I write in journalist abstain for every single position. I don't vote on anything down to dog catcher, you know, because I got to be able to be like, fuck you or great job.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good rule. And you know, I have had politicians on. I had Vivek Ramaswamy on. I actually debated him at the Libertarian National Convention. And you're right. I was biased towards him as a consequence of that. Like, this just, it's irrefutable. Like, once you humanize these people, which if you're dealing with a charismatic political figure, naturally they're going to humanize themselves to you. That's like what their job is, right?
That's right.
And I think that it made me biased towards him. So I got to reflect on that. And, you know, I've stopped interviewing people for the most part. So maybe that won't even be an issue moving forward, but it's something for me to chew on. Is maybe I should just make that a rule.
I think, well, that's the thing. Everyone has to do it their own way and do differently. I mean, I don't know better than everyone else. I'm just telling you what works for me. That's where I'm at. And I'm also in a whole different seat, man. Like, you know, my, I guess, like, life journey and your life journey and anyone I'm going to talk to, it's different. And like the way you see the world is different. And just for me, like, that's for the part of my content that's going to be like where we're covering things that have to do with geopolitics and stuff like that. That's how I like to keep it. You know, in a month or two here, hopefully, assuming this war dies down, I'm going to be able to go back to just doing completely random content all the time, which is what I was doing until about a month and a half ago. Right now, there's just two stories that are fucking insane: Epstein and this war in Iran. And so, yeah, I'm talking about these things. But again, you know, who knows? If I had been a lot bigger in 2024 and you have that opportunity, I might have fucking done it. I would like to think I wouldn't have, but you don't know.
No, of course. And I think, as you said, like, we are in different seats, different lanes to it. Like, I am much more overtly political. And I think really the lesson I learned isn't so much that I wouldn't have someone like a Vivek Ramaswamy on my show, or a Trump, or a JD Vance for that matter, but rather I need to be more hard hitting. Like, I wasn't being as critical of his claims, of his background, of his history as I should have been. And, you know, it's just because I'm not really deep in that world. You know, I hadn't ever had the opportunity to interview someone who could go on to become the president of the United States. Like, it was just a leveling up that I wasn't necessarily prepared for. So anyways, I think I will handle it. If whether I decide to have them on again in the future or not, I will handle it very differently. I will definitely try and cut through the bullshit, because really that's what I like about what you do and what I do, is like, I am trying to get to the honest to God's truth, regardless of what topic I'm dealing with. And that includes politicians. I want to know who the fuck you are. And I think we've never needed more desperately to really know who the fuck these people are. From Epstein to Iran to Israeli influence to all of these things. It's like, we really need to get to the bottom of this, because we just simply don't have time. I just keep I agree.
I agree, man. It's like, the things that people actually want to see improve in society for the next generations, we're spending so much time on other shit that we're putting all that to the side. And it's like, just like you, I'm looking at my watch going, come on, what kind of world are the kids and grandkids going to be living in? Why don't we work on creating that right now?
I travel so much that I see it. There's not a single Western city that's thriving. And they're all degrading in exactly the same way.
Is a lot of it just a moral decay, or is it actually true from everything?
It's a lot of things, but it's self-hatred. Every city.
Crazy.
Every European city, every American city. It's just what people lose their will to live, their will to pass on their culture, their values, their religion to their children, their will to have children. It's all gone. I mean, it's not gone with everybody, but I mean, in the cities, you really see it. It's like the people who built this are long gone, and their descendants have fled, and they don't care enough to keep it going. There's just a lack of self-respect that is disgusting to me, and I have contempt for it.
Now, Tucker goes on to juxtapose his analysis of American cities to those that are happening in Islamic cities, and particularly, UAE and all these other places that are kind of blossoming because of all the oil money in these technocratic cities that they've been producing. And he's being dragged mercilessly for saying that he prefers Sharia law to American jurisprudence or whatever. It's like, that's not what he said. He was just saying, even with Sharia law, they are producing things that used to be produced in America, and we're not producing them anymore. Why? And that's, the smear merchants are going to try and drag him for it. But I know that's not the point he was making. So I wanted to ask you, because NYC. I mean, this is a very, very famous city. What is your diagnosis as to why our country doesn't seem to be producing the same level of beauty, the same level of ingenuity? I think it's very multifactorial, but for New York or New Jerseyan, what do you think is the underlying cause of all this?
So I disagree with Tucker.
Okay.
But I do not, I'm in the middle. Here's what I mean by that. Tucker loves to be a doomer on this kind of issue, and he's very into that. You know, I'm just down here in Florida. It's beautiful. I go out here. I don't have a city. It's not a problem. Everything's cleaned up. I go to New York. It's disgusting. It's horrible. You know, and like, to me, yeah, I'm a little worried about Mamdani, to be clear. You know, he's only been here a couple months. He hasn't burned the place down yet. To me, it's like you got to have a Democrat and a Republican running in that kind of thing. Like, let's not go to fucking Looneyville. And I think he has a lot of Looneyville things. That's a separate issue. But I do think the Doomerville of like our cities are dead is wrong. And I'm going to give you an example of this. Deef, my producer and a really close friend, he and I went to Paris and Rome in December. Now, I've lived in Rome before. I lived there for 6 months. It's got a special place in my heart for sure. But Paris, I'd never been to. And when we told people we were going to Paris, all we heard was, oh my God, I heard it's so dangerous and it's falling apart and it's just awful. And like, it's a symbol of the West going down. One of the most lovely, beautiful cities I've ever been to. Now, to put that into context, I got sick right when I got there. So I said, I'm a big walker. So I said to Deef, I was like, all right, here's the deal. You need me on my feet. If our ass is sitting down, I'm going to be dead. So we're going to be doing a lot of walking. So in a span of 4 days at one point, we walked 46 miles of Paris at all hours of the day and night. One of the safest places.
When you said big walker, I didn't know you were talking marathons.
Oh yeah. No, don't get caught in the city with me. We don't take Ubers, you know? So, and that's what I do in New York too. When I tell you I could barely find trash on the ground, I'm not exaggerating that, which is something that we could do a better job with in New York, to be clear. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like there are certainly, I see potholes everywhere and stuff like that. And this is where you don't see that in these Middle Eastern cities. And Tucker's 100% right about that. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I am sure if I really wanted to go through Google Maps and find some shit, I could have found a neighborhood in Paris that, just like in any city in America, I wouldn't want to be in after 9 o'clock at night or maybe after 7 o'clock at night, right? Those weren't the ones I walked through, but we walked through a fuck ton of them. And even the people who, in the stereotypical fashion of people who are freaking out that the West is falling, who are wearing hijabs and stuff, spoke French, which maybe we could learn something from that here too, by the way, because it doesn't always work that way in American cities. But, you know, we were just like, and so many people were hitting us up in the comments like, oh my God, stay safe. Bro, we were there at like Christmas time too. We're underneath the Eiffel Tower. We're sitting ducks. Lovely. You know? And so I think a lot of it is overstated. It's overstated. And I think Tucker does love overstating that for sure. That is not to say that a place like I haven't been, like Dubai, for example, I haven't heard unbelievable things about the cleanliness, the safety, and all this stuff that is beyond the standards of Western cities. Having not been there, I believe that 100%. I've talked to enough people. I think that's a real thing for sure. So yeah, maybe we could learn from some of that for sure. But like even New York, I remember the last day I was in New York before the pandemic was February 28th, 2020. And it was a Friday. And if you remember, the 24th had been that Monday. That was the first day where the markets were taking a shit. And I was still working on Wall Street at the time. So then Friday, they took a big shit. And I remember I had a meeting in a building right by Grand Central Station, and I was like an hour early. So I went down to the bottom level of Grand Central Station, and I'm on the Bluetooth talking with a client and refreshing the stock page while I'm talking with them. And I'm seeing the Dow down fucking 1,800, 2,100. And I'm like, holy shit. And I just kind of looked around at the place for a second and I saw it packed. I saw all these people. And I remember thinking to myself, you want to talk about a cold take? I was like, we're going to be all right. Yeah, no, we're gonna be fine. This is nothing. And then that ended up being the last time I was there until January 2021, right after de Blasio left office. And I remember pulling in on the train to New York City with my buddy at 8:00 at night on a Friday. I had pulled in on that same train many, many times before at 8:00 on a Friday. And when I got out of Penn Station, I was like, oh my God. And it wasn't so much that like shit was falling. The buildings weren't falling down or anything. I didn't even see like that many rats, or that much trash. It wasn't great. It wasn't great, but it wasn't crazy. But like it was dead. There was no one out. The streets were gone. And when you saw someone, they looked down and they had a fucking N95 mask on, and you thought it was like Mad Max Fury Road. And then I remember he makes us get in the Uber, of course, because he knows we'll be fucking walking all night if I have my way. So we get off the Uber in the Lower East Side, which is like the most happening, young person neighborhood in New York. And we walk, he's like, all right, I'm like 5 blocks away. I'm like, great. So we walk about a block, and I was like, Brady. And we stopped. And I could hear someone on, I think, a mandolin 3 blocks away. I started walking towards it, playing the Godfather theme song. And the fact that I could hear this bar for bar, note for note in New York City on a Friday night at about 8:15 p.m. perfectly from 3 blocks away on the Lower East Side, I was like, holy shit, this place might be dead. And I say all this because even after all that shit and all the propaganda with COVID and everything, somehow it kind of came back. And yes, there's plenty of things I want to see fixed. I don't want to sit here and be like, New York's the cleanest city of all time. It's incredible. We in the West are setting the standard for the whole world. All of our architecture, new architecture is beautiful. I'm not saying these things. But like the whole what's the old Trump line? It's the American dream is dead. Like that whole like Tucker Carlson doomerism of it. I disagree with that. And I think we have to learn in order to build things up into what we want it to be, to have more beauty standards again, to have more cleanliness standards, more safety standards. We have to love the good things that we have as well. And some people might call me a fucking hippie for saying that. My hair probably doesn't help with that, but that is how I feel about it. And I do think that I have to see a lot of things with my own 2 eyes to know that sometimes it's a lot of people who actually aren't in these places who are saying this stuff. You saw Tucker and Piers disagree about London. I've talked with people who live in London as well, and they have thoughts where they're like, there's certain neighborhoods is kind of let that go. It shouldn't be there. And the rest of it, they're like, I love it. It's great. It's not to say there aren't some trends there that you shouldn't be looking at going, yo, that needs to fucking change. I'm not saying of course. I'm not, again, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater from either direction. And so that, those are the 2 sides that get attention. You get the people like Tucker, like, it's dead. Or you get the people that are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Everything's great. And there's a guy getting shot right next to you.
Right.
Maybe it's neither.
No, yeah, of course. I think the truth is certainly in between. I just think that the Tucker analysis, well, I agree with you that the doomerist conclusion is probably not helpful. I do think that the trend line for our nation, it is helpful because it drives urgency, because it requires people to pay attention, to start to actually analyze, all right, what were A, B, C, D, E, F, G that actually got us into this paradigm? And
that's fair.
So for that reason, I like Tucker's analysis. I do agree with you though, if it's conveyed in a way that it's like, look how fucked everything is and there's nothing we can do about it, that's a big mistake. So I don't think that that's really how Tucker feels about it. Fortunately, is that he does seem to genuinely want to change things. I just think he believes it's much further down that path than probably you and I do. I'm probably closer to Tucker than you are on that particular topic. Maybe it's just because of my own cities. Like I grew up in San Diego, and then everything's fucking pristine and perfect. And then all of a sudden there's these lockdowns, and all of a sudden there's these homeless encampments, and then all of a sudden my car's getting broken into and homeless dudes are shitting in my front yard. And it's like, all right. And then you go to LA and you go to Skid Row and you're like, this is like a literal zombie apocalypse movie. So it's all localized. Like you can't make far reaching assessments based off of that stuff. But I do think that there is something to be said for the fact that we are just not like the far and away culture mover, industry mover, innovative, reproducing, having families, like all of those things that you and I kind of grew up in, that really is imperiled. So I just want to.
I agree on that.
You know,
I think that, no. I think there are a lot of things Tucker says about like the American nuclear unit ideas, if you will, that he's on those issues. I'm going, I got numbers. I got numbers across the board on that are more black and white rather than like, hey, you got to go stand here and see it. You know what I mean? So I want to give that. I think part of it's also like I've always had a problem throughout my whole life with self-talk to myself where I tell myself that I suck at this or like whatever this thing is in front of me. It's always like, you fucking, and it would limit me for a long time. Now, I don't think the opposite of like, I'm great at everything is the answer, but I think about that sometimes because I've worked on that a lot over the past 5-6 years. I think about that when I'm talking about like my own country and things and trying to be like a force for changing things that are clearly on a bad trajectory while also not being like, it's all dead. Everything's gone. Life, the sky is black. There isn't $1 on the street. You know what I mean? So
that balance is really hard to find.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't say it better myself. Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly how I feel. And particularly because of the stuff I cover. It's like, I'm covering really dark shit. Like there's just no way around it. So it's very hard for me to not also be dragged into the darkness, to like still find reason for optimism and still try and leave my audience with a sense of hope, because the last thing I want are the people who are, and I know this is going to sound egotistical, but the people who are smart enough to be listening to me, I need y'all to be motivated, yo. I need you guys to be fucking out there crushing. I need you to be having families. I need you to be doing, creating the next big tech boom or whatever. Like I want those people to be the leaders of the future of our country, because I really believe like the people who are tuning into a show like mine, not to say that I'm right about everything, far from it, but like I'm diving deep and I'm not selling you anything, bullshit wise. And it's like, if you found me in the infinite options of the internet to listen to, that tells me something about you. Like it tells me that like you're really going after it. Like you really want to get to the bottom of shit, because that's who I am, So I want those people to fucking crush. So I don't want them to be depressed. That's what I wanted to say about it.
You're like the Fight Club of movies, but in commentary culture. I got it. It's like you just don't talk about it, but you're here. That's good, man. And I think we need honest voices from all different perspectives doing exactly that. And at the end of the day, we should all want the same things. And I think people in power across the world and in our own country as well have decided that, they want to distract us with fights over stupid shit that then, lets the road paved to hell occur where we're not looking. So,
yeah. Well, that's our job. Make sure that they see that road getting paved. All right, Julian, go ahead and tell my audience where they can follow you, man. I really appreciate your time. I think that, as I said, you are the next wave. So it's good to know you, man.
Thank you. You as well, Clint. I'm looking forward to having you up here to be on the show. And you won't get shot outside, I promise. But
I have faith.
So I am, you can just type in my name, Julian Dorey, on YouTube. I have 4 channels over there. Main channel does the full podcast. We put out 2 3-hour episodes a week with guests, and now we've also been doing a 90-minute episode with just me and Deef once a week as well. So there's 3 of those a week, and then I got a clips channel, a 1-hour channel, and a channel that does some shorts. And then over on Instagram, I'm at Julian D. Dorey, and on Twitter, I'm at Julian Dorey.
It's a great show. Like no holds barred, no bullshit. Exactly what I try to do when I used to do more interviews. So I know my audience will, if they haven't already listened to you, which I'm sure most have, they will enjoy it. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please do hit the like button, subscribe, share it around, and we will catch you next time. Peace. Before I get out of here, I just want to thank you guys so much for supporting the show, listening, watching, however you're consuming this right now. It means the world to me. I know you have, as I said in the episode with Julian, you have infinite options in the world, and you have chosen to spend your time listening to my thoughts on these matters. I genuinely appreciate and respect each and every one of you, and I respect your time. So I apologize that this episode was as long as it was, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found it valuable. If you did, algo-wise, long-form interviews like this are very unpopular. So if you really enjoyed it, I think you have the option to hype videos right now on YouTube, and you can do 3 per week. So if you could save those up and use those on my little channel, I would really appreciate that. If you can hype every episode of Liberty Lockdown just to try and break through the algo, I think it'll make a major difference. And if it doesn't, well, at least we tried, because that's all we can do in this world, right? But yeah, please do hit the like button. And as you guys know, I'm one of the most responsive people that you will find on the YouTubes. If you leave a comment, I do read all of them, sometimes stupidly when I shouldn't be, but I do read all of them. So if you thought, got anything wrong, got anything super right, just have any feedback for me, drop it down below. I don't respond to all of them, but I do read them all. So yeah, take some time, show some love. All right, hit the like button. We're out of here. And last but not least, go to mypillow.com, use promo code LOCKDOWN to get you some cozy action from Mike Lindell. Shout out Mike Lindell, mypillow.com, promo code LOCKDOWN. And last but not least, if you want to support the show, subscribe on my X, that's at Liberty Lock Pod. It's the easiest way to get a follow from me. I don't follow that many people, but I do follow every single one of the supporters of my show, either libertylockdown.locals.com. If you want to follow me, just leave a message there. Or if you want me to follow you, I should say, or go to x.com and subscribe to at Liberty Lock Pod. It's just $5 a month. It's an easy way to support my work. I pour my entire weeks and months of years into this program for you guys, and I know so many of you appreciate it. It's a very economical way to show support, and it allows me to not sell out. And for the record, even if you didn't support me, I'm not going to sell out regardless, but I just don't have it in me. But it's an easy way to show a little financial support, to take some of the pressure off, and most importantly, to help me grow this show. Thank you guys.
Subscribe to Liberty Lockdown. Great podcast. Clint is tight.